Okay.
Good afternoon. We're here on behalf of the Ryan Anthony documentary and Cancer Blows Song of Hope. And we're here with the esteemed composer of the film soundtrack, Mr. Anthony Lorenzo. And just a little bit of a bio on Anthony, and I'm going to read a little bit of this. Anthony is an Emmy Award winning composer, and he's a trumpet soloist, virtuoso, and he's been nominated for a Grammy. His compositions have been performed by major symphonies such as the San Francisco, the New World Symphony, the Utah Symphony, Tokyo Symphony, and the Boston Pops. He attended the Curtis Institute of Music, and he participated at Tanglewood, where he received the Harry Shapiro Award, and was also nominated by Leonard Bernstein for an Avery Fisher Career Grant. He's performed as a trumpet player with the New World Symphony, the Philadelphia Orchestra, and the Utah Symphony, and others. He's a founding member of the Center City Brass Quintet and the Proteus 7 Ensemble. His work in the film score and TV vectors included composing over 100 film trailers for films such as Toy Story, Forrest Gump, The Lost World, the Harry Potter series, and as a composer for the entire movie, such movies as Benji Off the List, The Chosen One, Meltdown, and most recently, Bathtubs Over Broadway. He's done work for ABC on their various sports programs, and he resides in Seattle with his family. So with that being said, Tony, welcome.
How you doing, Nick? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. So let's talk a little bit about Song of Hope.
Sure.
How did you come to get involved in this project?
Well, Ryan actually approached me, and I should let you know that Ryan and I go way back. Ryan and I knew each other back in the early 90s through some friends through school. We had some fellow musician acquaintances from Curtis and CIM where he was going to school. And I heard whispers of Ryan through the grapevine about this great young up and coming trumpet player, and that we should meet. We both had a similar kind of, personality, similar love, of course, not just for trumpet, for films and whatnot. And lo and behold, right around 1990 or so, Ryan and I met through the National Repertory Orchestra, also known as NRO. And we really kind of got this like really tight bond relationship that carried on through our working environment and relationship with the Center City Brass Quintet, which we played together for many years and did a couple of recordings with together. So Ryan and I knew each other and were very close friends in the 90s through the 2000s. And Ryan had actually even played trumpet on some of those film trailers, the ones you had mentioned. And so we'd always talked about working together in the future, hoping that someday maybe I could score a film like one of those Star Wars films and he'd play trumpet on it. And we would usually fight over the trumpet parts too, because we both loved that style. But it kind of like carried through our lives the way we sort of would just kind of fantasize about these moments to work together in the future on a film, which now brings us to the story of Song of Hope, where Ryan, now this is probably about 3 years ago, about a year and a half, 2 years before he passed, Ryan approached me about being the composer of this film that he was having made of himself. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of like rolled my eyes like, yeah, whatever, Ryan, you're going to be fine. This is whatever you want to do, but you're going to be healthy. You're going to be fine. We're going to live a long life together. And we're both going to be sitting on the porch one day, drinking lemonade and laughing about the old days, that kind of thing. So I was like, sure, Ryan, I'll do whatever you want, thinking this is never going to happen. And then, unfortunately, Ryan passed about a year and a half ago, and just before his passing, I was again introduced to Chris, the director, about the more serious situation and the fact that, yes, indeed, this is definitely happening. We definitely want to bring you aboard to do this. And then it just kind of like really kind of continued at that point. And Chris had been working on the film for several years, actually. I think he's been a part of it for about 5 years now.
Right.
And which I'm sure you know all that. So that's kind of how I got brought in into the story.
How did you approach it compositionally? I mean, you had a personal relationship with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course we know the story.
Sure.
It's a cancer story,
Yeah.
but it's also a courage and courageous story.
Yeah, it's an
And all of the
inspirational
things he
story
did.
for sure.
So how did you approach that compositionally? That must have been interesting.
Yeah, well, Chris and I spoke about things in quite detailed notes as far as what we wanted to, what kind of story we wanted to tell. And, we kind of wanted something that would almost be kind of a symphonic underscore, like its own composition, not just underscore to a movie, something that almost had movements to it, melodic structure to it. Individuals would have themes. The music would tell a story from the beginning to the end, rather than just sit there with electronic beds of static kind of movement, which you might hear more so in documentaries. So we kind of went for it and took the sort of traditional orchestral approach, but tried doing something that was modern at the same time as something classic that you might have heard in other films, and something too that maybe Ryan would appreciate. I think that was always kind of subconscious for me, thinking, in fact, the whole time I was writing it, I was thinking, oh, Ryan's going to really like this. He's going to call me back and have a good giggle. I mean, that was definitely going on. And I think that's how I kind of got through writing the score. If I really sat there and thought about my good friend not here anymore,
Right.
that made it more difficult. So I just kept writing, thinking, he is here. He's going to listen to this whole thing in the end, and he's going to just call me up and say, man, this is really cool. I like what you did there. And, I like your influence here of this composer or that. And you're like, yeah, of course, Ryan, you love these composers. And I felt this here in this moment. I felt this here. So it was kind of like an inspirational co-pilot, I think, that I had with me, him thinking that he was there the whole time with me.
As you approach the different segments of the film, and again, knowing that you knew him, did you ever get to the point where you just had to stop for a second and compose yourself and literally then pick it up again?
Absolutely. In fact, there were times I actually had to turn off the video, and I worked with just dialogue, because there were a few scenes in there. I don't want to give too much away, but you can imagine watching somebody go through a period of time, they're just getting sicker and sicker, and you're seeing this visually on camera. You're watching somebody pass before your eyes over and over and over and over again.
Right, but
And
there's a heroic element to it too.
Oh, there's of course. I mean, that's well, we can talk about that as well. But
Sure.
You asked me what was difficult, and that would be something that would be difficult. And I find that visually sometimes I had to turn it off and just listen to the dialogue, and sometimes that made it better for me, to sort of get into the nuances of what was being said from the parties involved, on camera or even off camera too, when people would discuss what was going on with him. But as far as inspirational, of course, we wanted to capture that. That's what this film is about. This thing is about inspiration. This thing is about what you can do with your life, whether you have 100, 1,000 days left, 1 day left, 20,000 days left, live it to your fullest. And that's what Ryan did. So
Absolutely. When you, well, let me ask you this. How long in terms of a span of time did it take you to literally from start to finish to do the entire score?
it was several months. We took some time off. We started in the middle of the spring, I think, and then we took a month off and came back on it. And then once we sort of came close to the end, we were just bouncing some different orchestrations back and forth and some mixes and my mock-ups and stuff. And sometimes that last month can drag on a little bit, but it wasn't. I think once we established what we were doing with thematic material and direction, it kind of all the parts seemed to fall in place. There's always going to be a moment in a film that's more difficult to write and you have to sit on it sometimes for a few days. But we pressed on when things were difficult, and it was, I have to say, it was such an incredible team to work with, working with Chris, Luke, and Tara. I mean, they were such wonderful people, and they weren't handcuffing me. They were letting me do my thing. They let me, have a voice in this. And I don't think that happens a lot in films these days. And so that was kind of a gift. So that was awesome.
Do you work from piano, or how do you approach that?
I have a MIDI keyboard, basically, that sends signals into the computer, and I have an array of sound samples, thousands and thousands of sound samples, from everything from your traditional orchestral instruments to worldly percussion instruments, sound design stuff, vocal stuff. It's just endless. I mean, I could spend hours every day just sampling and listening to other libraries out there, whether I'm purchasing stuff or creating new sounds. And so it's a really wide array of stuff that gives the director or producer an idea of what I'm doing.
When you did the actual recording in the sound studio,
Yes. Yeah.
Did you conduct?
Yes, I did.
Do you prefer to do that?
I prefer, it's a good question. You mean conduct over listening
Your own
in the sound booth?
material.
When it's my material, I like to sort of be in the driver's seat. I feel like I can do the best work from the podium, giving instruction and, sort of rallying the troops and pressing forward. I think the important thing with sessions, especially if there's a very tiny budget, you have to get a lot of music recorded in a very short amount of time.
Sure.
And we only had, the better part of a day to do it, one day to record everything. So we're cruising through the material. So I feel confident with it, and I've done it hundreds of times, sessions recorded and conducted. And then there are times when I like to listen in the control room when someone else is conducting, because my ears can focus in on stuff. But if we're in a time crunch, I think me being on the podium is what works best.
Did you record in Seattle or in LA?
We recorded in Seattle. Yeah, it was easier for me to stay here, especially during the pandemic. We weren't sure what was going to happen and where we could actually record live musicians, but we had the space to sort of separate everybody. And the brass players played actually the day before we recorded their tracks, and this way I could play the trumpet stuff. And then the next day I just had to conduct the strings, the winds, and any kind of keys. Or
so you performed on the score yourself?
I performed on it as well. Yes.
Okay. And just as a wrap up, we are almost at the point of submitting the film, as you know, to various film festivals, which is going on right now.
Yes.
And
this will go on for a while, I'm assuming, probably for 6 months or so, because there are so many festivals going on now that they'll try to get into for like Sundance or Toronto. I mean, they're just everywhere. So Yeah.
What other kind of projects outside of Song of Hope now are you involved in?
Yeah, it's funny you ask. I just released my latest original Christmas music for orchestras, but very much in the same vein
I
as
swear I
Sleigh
didn't
Ride.
know that. I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah. So it's very much in the same vein as Sleigh Ride. So you've got your standalone orchestra piece, and then you have your version with lyrics that the choir performs with the orchestra. So I think Columbus Symphony is going to premiere it. Seattle Symphony is going to premiere it. Cleveland Pops is going to do it. There's like, so it's just, I just released it last week. And so I sent it out to about 14 different conductors. So the people that could put it on their programs are putting it on. And if they can't get it on this year, they promised me a
Oh,
performance
exactly.
next year. So, I mean, the funny thing is usually I don't write or let's say finish writing a holiday piece near the holiday. Usually it's nowhere near it. I'm usually writing that like in the early part of the summer
Sure.
or in the spring, but this was actually something I wrote last year. I got away from it and I said, don't forget, you got to come back to this piece. This is something very, very catchy. This will be a haunting earworm for many. It's a very
Wow.
catchy thing. And I thought, well, is there time to get it out this year? I was like, nah, finish it in the winter and then get it out next year. I thought, no, let's see how long it takes me to sit down and like in a day. I finished it, finished all the copy work, and was able to put up like a little mock-up of it and got it off to people all within 24, maybe 48 hours. And it was like, I got lucky. You know, some
Wow.
people want to they're putting some faith in me on it, and hopefully it turns out to be a successful composition.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Anthony, this has been absolutely a joy.
Yeah, for
And
me
it's a
too.
pleasure to finally meet you, man.
Same here.
From New
Same
York
here.
to Seattle. I love it. Well,
Yeah, well,
thank
thank
you
you so
very,
much.
very, very much. I'm going to say goodbye. And if you stick around for a little bit, there's something I want to tell you offline. Okay?
Sure thing. Sounds good.
Great. Thank
All
you
right,
so
Nick.
much again.
Okay.
Anthony Di Lorenzo. Your website is
AnthonyDiLorenzo.com.
okay. And the movie is Song of Hope, the Ryan Anthony story. Thank you all. Bye-bye now.
Bye now. See ya.